This is the new Colnago G4-X. It's their new gravel race bike, and it's got tyre clearance that's been boosted up to 45mm. It's also got a new front end, but it has some features that I don't really like on a $9,750 bike. It's also got a lot of stiffness, and I mean a lot. Does that ruin the ride? We'll get to my first ride impressions in a moment, but let's start with what's new. I'll start with the big one, and that is tyre clearance, because the old G4-X had space for just 42mm tyres. That's not too bad for a race bike, but it is slightly limiting for the general rider that might buy this bike. This is now up to 45mm of clearance, and they've done that primarily by addressing the design of the chainstays. So the section that is right behind the bottom bracket has got taller, but crucially thinner. And this is really apparent on the drive side chainstay. In fact, there is now just enough room, and I mean just, for a mechanical gear cable outer to get through. The second big change comes up at the front end. That is a brand new integrated system. Now, Colnago is supplying this bike with the CC01 bar that we first saw on the C68. But it's also providing a brand new wide version, with this one behind me coming with a 6cm flare at the drops. So the measurement at the shifter clamp area on this model is 40cm. Down at the drops, it's 46cm. Now, I like this, but it is limited, and I'll get to that in a bit. The third, more noticeable change is that this takes a lot of learnings and a lot of tube shapes from Colnago's V4-RS road race bike. That is, of course, the bike of Tadej Pogačar, who uses that bike at the Tour de France. Colnago actually told us that Tadej Pogačar has influence across a lot of their bikes, and he just wants them basically to be stiffer and lighter. And the final change is an aesthetic one. So we've got 3 new gravel-inspired colours here, with this one being a sandy yellow. There's also a cut-in-half logo. You get half on this side, half on the other side. But what do you think of that? Let us know down in the comments. Before I get into my ride impressions, let's quickly run through the build options. So this is the top spec. It's a SRAM Red E-TAP Access Explore group set with Zip 303S wheels and Pirelli tyres. That little package will set you back $9,750, which is quite steep. But prices do come down as you go through the SRAM group sets. And then there are 2 Shimano GRX RX 820 bikes. One of them's 1-bike, one of them's 2-bike. Both of them are £4,500 or $4,750. And you'll notice there that I quoted pounds. That is because the 2 Shimano builds are the only 2 that are coming into the UK, which makes this, or giving me this, a bit of a tease. If you are a fan of Campagnolo, sorry, no Ekar here. They've completely left out the Italian group set brand. And despite the bike being launched today, well, you can't get it until June the 20th. The other thing that I want to mention about this bike is down at the chain set here. No power meter here, despite this being a SRAM Red build. That's, to me, a little bit disappointing, especially when you consider the top price. Okay, let's tell you how this thing actually rides. Felix and I, Felix is behind the camera, came out to Girona, and we were expecting lovely sunshine. And you might be wondering, why are you not outside? Well, we're in Felix's hotel room. As you can see, he's keeping it very nice and clean because it's absolutely throwing it down outside. Our 50-kilometre ride that was planned got cut down to, I think, about 23 kilometres in the end. But the route did pack in, well, plenty of climbing, plenty of flowing descent, some twisty single track, and a little bit of road riding as well. My very first impression of this bike was that it felt very much like a road bike. Descending on this thing was, well, as good as wet Spanish lanes and gravel roads would kind of allow. But I did, on a few occasions, feel confident to really tip it in and connect a few apexes up. That said, on the day, my braking left a lot to be desired, and Felix was able to undercut me on several hairpins. And I've got to put that in because he'll be putting it in. I think gnarlier descents are less suited to the G4-X's capabilities. The weight balance here really just felt a little bit too far forward. The stiffness in the frame that I talked about earlier, that was also evident. That's brilliant when you're on the road, but on those gnarlier descents, you really feel it going through the bike and up into you. But this is a pure brace bike, so I think that can be forgiven to a degree. That stiffness, however, is very useful on smooth gravel, steep climbs, and faster road sections. To be fair, the Pirelli tyres that we've got on here, those are dry summer tyres. They're really not cut out for what we were doing today. But they did cope better than I thought, with the low shoulder knobs really scrambling for any traction available. And then on smooth road and gravel sections, the slick central tread really does come into its own. It felt super, super happy to maintain speed.
We've done some descending, and I'm not going to lie, these are Spanish descents in the rain, so they are quite slippery. So how do we test a bike like this for some of its more punchy capabilities? Well, this is a climb, and Felix, the director, has decided that I should go and do a full gas effort up it. So thanks, Felix. Off we go. Instantly, that acceleration is pretty good. This bike is carrying a little bit extra weight over something like a Crux. Oh my lord, that's steep. But it's not too bad. You get into a seated position and it feels very much like a road bike. We were saying that earlier. Okay, I need to kind of stop talking on. Oh, Felix! Oh, I gotta chase Felix now. We're done. Yeah. Bye. Bye.
Those climbs also kind of ascend in steps, and I felt really able to kind of keep my speed through those steep ramps. It's really nice. Sprinting from the drops feels very nippy. The wide bar on that CC01 really does give you a lot of leverage. I was also very happy with the low slung ride position when we were trying to hunker down and get through the road sections as quickly as possible.
So the nice thing is, if you're coming from a road bike, then a gravel bike like this, you get a very similar position. And I've found myself quite comfortable on the roads like this. It just means that if you are stringing together a lot of gravel sections, which, Felix, we do in the UK quite a bit, don't we?
Oh, we do.
Yeah, you can ride in your road position and be relatively efficient. Look at me, I'm speedy.
Now we come to some of the things that, on initial impressions, and I must stress this is based on 23 kilometers of riding, some of the things that I don't like so much. And the first is the bar. The CC01 wide does come in just 5 sizes, and those are stem sizes. You are stuck with 40 centimeters at the hoods and then 46 centimeters at the drops. If that doesn't work for you, then Colnago doesn't have a different version. I will caveat this a little, because Colnago has gone to a 1.5 inch upper bearing. That means that they can run a 1 1/8 steerer, and that is pretty standard. That means that if you don't like this setup, you can go and get a different stem and bar combo from pretty much any brand. Second thing I don't like so much, and that is really because of the quite tasty price, is some of the finishing aspects. So the drive side chainstay has one of these protectors, and that felt very loose in my hands. That of course could be a one-off, but that does not excuse the seat post clamp cover of feeling very, very flimsy indeed. And then as you move along the top tube, the cover for the top tube bar bag bolts, well, that feels very plastic and very flimsy. I will say that none of this seemed to be rattling while we were actually riding. So does this matter? I'm not sure. I need more time to test. Thirdly, and while Colnago has worked to increase the tyre clearance, it's not the biggest that you can get on a race bike. The Specialized Crux has space for 47mm tyres, and the Santa Cruz Stigmata has space for 50mm tyres. Whether you need that excessive tyre clearance is up to you and your riding, but I will say that those brands do use that tyre clearance to kind of temper the stiffness in their frames. And that is my final gripe about this bike. It's the stiffness. Colnago has actually worked hard to make this stiffer. And that's great for gravel racing on big, wide, open roads. But I do wonder whether it really limits the appeal of this bike for you and I who might actually be looking at buying this. So how do we summarize this bike? Well, Colnago hasn't really changed a huge amount, and you might be disappointed with that. For me, as an average gravel racer, I think I would benefit from this just being a little less stiff, a bit more compliant, just because that would benefit me over a long day of gravel racing. But all right, I'll be battered and bruised, but that was a blast to ride, especially downhill. But what do you think of it? Let us know down in the comments. A gravel race bike that I've been riding a lot more is the Specialized Crux, and you can see my review just up here. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.